Okay, so this is the third in the series of shiurim on the first Mishnah in Avos 4, chapter 4, Ben Zoma. And I have a feeling that this is going to be a bit of a challenge tonight because it is, number one, a very near and dear topic to every human being's heart, which is happiness. Second is that this is an area that I think people have thought about or talked about a lot. And so there's always the challenge of trying to navigate that line between trying to look at it with fresh eyes and also trying to look for chidushim but not ignoring our intuitions. And it also is going to have an intersection between, I guess we'll call it ethics and some metaphysics or something like that. We'll see what happens. Okay. Ben Zoma Omer. So we're going to read the whole thing again. Ben Zoma says, Eizehu Chacham, which is a wise man, Halomi Mikol Adam, one who learns from everyone. Shnemar, as it says, Mikol Melamdai Hiskalti, Ki Edu Secha Sichali. From all my, as it is stated, from all my teachers, I gained intelligence, for your testimonies are a conversation to me. Eizehu Gibor, who is mighty, Hakovish as Yitzra, one who conquers his inclination. Shnemar, as it says, Tov Erechapai Migibor, Moshem Barucha Milochet Ir. Better one who is slow to anger than a mighty man or a strong man, and one who rules his spirit than one who captures a city. Right, and here's our phrase: Eizehu Ashir, who is wealthy, Hasameach Bechelko, one who is content with his portion. Obviously, we need to talk about the translation of that, but I had to say something. Shneimar, as it says, Yagia Kapecha Kisochel, through the exertion of your hands, you will eat. Ashrecha v'tov lach. Okay, Ashrecha is translated either as fortunate or praiseworthy. V'tov lach, and it is good for you. So that's the pasuk in Tehillim 128:2, and then the drasha that Ben Zoma says is Ashrecha, you're fortunate or praiseworthy, is talking about ba'olam hazeh, in this world, v'tov lach, and it is good for you la'olam haba, in the world to come. Okay, and then the last one, which we're not doing tonight, Eizehu mechubad, who is honored, or which person is honored, hamachabed es habrios, one who honors people. Shnemar, as it says, ki machabdai achabed uvoza yikalu. For those who honor me, I will honor, and those who disparage me will be made light of. Okay, so we had three, I believe, questions on that applied to the entire Mishnah previously, okay, which I'm going to repeat here, and then we'll do our questions on this specific part. Okay, so we had, what is the question of Eizehu? First of all, is it asking who is, or is it saying which is? Because people translate it as who is wise, who is strong, who is wealthy, but Eizehu literally means which is or which one is. And then what's the difference? Is this a definition? Is it a description? Is it a litmus test? What are we being told for each of these three? Okay, two is Eizehu Gibor, or sorry, two is why does Ben Zoma focus on these four characteristics? What unifies them? Is there an order or hierarchy? And then three, who is the intended audience of this Mishnah? Yeah, let's just say, who is this? And then if it's for everyone, if it's for a chassid in training, we said, isn't this obvious? I think we were talking about the first clause, but if it's for everyone, then how might this apply to us? Okay, so what are the other questions on our clause here of Eizehu's Ashir? Yeah, tomorrow.
What does Sameach Bechelko mean?
Yeah, okay, so the main question obviously is going to be, what does Sameach Bechelko mean? Okay, and I think we could break that down into a couple of sub questions. Okay, if you had to break that down to sub questions, what would you say? Not just for tomorrow, but anyone.
Okay.
Yeah, anyone. Yeah.
All right. What is happiness in this context, or being
Right.
happy in this context?
What does simcha mean in this context? Okay, and I'm just gonna say, just as some possibilities. Is this contentedness, joy, celebration, ecstatic revelry? Okay, simcha, there's a lot of meanings of simcha. Okay, yeah.
And what is a portion?
Okay, what does chelik refer to? Okay, anyone have any other questions, either as sub questions of this or questions on the clause? Because I think there are a lot more questions than I thought, at least when I started preparing this. But any questions? All questions are game. Yeah, tomorrow.
What's the connection between the pasuk and the idea?
Okay, that is another major question. What is the connection between the pasuk and the statement of Ben Zoma? Sorry, I guess in the idea. Yeah, and can you elaborate on what you mean by that? Because I think it's that could also be asked in different ways.
Yeah, I guess I don't really see what this pasuk, it doesn't explicitly say something about Ashir, and it also
Okay.
doesn't exactly say something about Sameach B'chalko.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was hoping to say. Okay, so it doesn't mention wealth, nor does it mention Sameach B'chalko. So the question is like, if this is intended as a proof, how does this prove it? Anything? If this is not intended as a proof, then what is it doing here? Yeah, Lauren.
My question is about the statement after the pasuk, like Ashrecha
Yeah.
b'lam tov lach le'olam haba. I guess what is that? What is that?
Right.
I guess it's explaining the pasuk, but then
Okay.
does that explain the sameach lechelko? Like, is that talking about olam haba, not olam hazeh? Like, I guess kind of what
Right.
is it?
So
doing
what is
there?
I'll try to cast a wide net. What is the meaning and purpose of Ben Zoma's additional drasha on the pasuk? So first of all, is this the only one? Yeah, this is the only one of the four where he adds something to the pasuk. Okay, so like, why here, in contrast to the other three clauses, does he add anything? And then, like, presumably, Sameach Bechelko, Sameach Bechelko is talking about Olam Hazeh. So why are we even bringing in Olam Haba? Yeah. Okay. Alex.
When it says "and it is good for you," is that qualifying the first or the second half of the statement? Like that you worked with exertion or that you're praiseworthy?
Yagia kapecha kisocha ashrecha v'tov lach. So the way I'm understanding it, just shot wise, is Yagi kapecha kisochel, that through the exertions of your hands you will eat. Hold on a second. Ashrecha v'tov lach. Hold on, I'm just blanking on this question. Your question is on, is the tovlach, which part is the tovlach going on?
Yeah, exactly. And like, if both, you like eating and exerting energy and being praiseworthy is the same thing, like, why do they like? I just don't get why it's tacked on at the end and what exactly is good about, the statement.
Right. So I think just I don't know if this is gonna obviate the question, but in the pshat, it's describing a person or a state of a person, which is that they're eating from the exertion of their hands, and then it's saying two things about the person: that they're praiseworthy and that they are that they're good. And then plain pshat is that both of them apply to that person in the same way, but then the drasha is saying that praiseworthy is talking about in this world and good is in the next world. So I guess the question is that we can ask is how do Ashrecha and Tovlach qualify the person described as Yagia Kapecha Ki Sochel? I think that covers your question, or am I missing your question?
No, that covers it.
Okay. Ayala?
I guess, and specifically because the other three are like actions that a person can like do specifically.
Okay, I only heard the last part of your question, but I can infer that the first part was the first part of your question. How do you do this?
Yeah.
Okay, so how does one practice? Oh, actually, I'm going to put this as a sub question of Sameach B'chalko. How does one do this? Okay, can you just turn it on? Okay, like a switch. Now I'm just going to note here that I don't know whether Ben Zoma is answering that question, and I could see there being a way to read the Mishnah where he's assuming that you either know or he's assuming you're going to learn it from somewhere else. So, for example, Kovish is Yitzro, he's not teaching you how to do that. He's just praising it, or honoring other people. Like you could study lots of things about how to honor other people. So I don't know if he's going to answer that, but I do think it's something that we need to answer, because otherwise, what use is this Mishnah to us? Okay, what else? I think there are at least a couple other sub questions within the tomorrow's question of what does Sameach B'chalko mean. Okay, this one maybe you are thinking about this already, but we already asked, what does chelik refer to? Yeah, Vanessa, you want to ask?
Sorry, I have one small question. I
Sure.
think this is more of a larger question, but what is wealthy doing here? I think with the other ones, it's more clear to see like, okay, those are
Okay.
mido, but like wealthy, well, happy.
Okay.
If it was like who's a happy person, one who's wealthy, what like I understand being happy, but not wealthy.
Right. Okay. So that truthfully is a question on it's an extension of question 2, which is why does he focus on these 4 characteristics? And we'll say like specifically why focus on wealth, which seems to be the odd one out, meaning that I don't know, the rest of these. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could argue different ways, but I think that's a fine question. Yeah. So what I was going to say is, we already asked what does chelik refer to, but the other question is, how do you know what is included in your chelik? Okay. Now this question is going to become clear as we do the meforshim, but like chelik means portion, which means that it is being apportioned to you. So we're going to see a lot of people talk about like what God gives you, but like, how do I know whether this is something that God is giving me, or this is something that I am taking beyond what God is giving me, or wanting beyond what God is giving me? Like how do you determine the parameters of it? So maybe you can include that is actually, maybe I'll put this into a sub question. What does chelik refer to? How do you know what is included in your chelik? Okay, any other questions here? I think there's at least one more. Okay, so we often ask the question, what is the Hava Amina? Okay, I think here, though, there are a couple ways you can say that. So I'm going to say, I'll put this over here. Hold on. Yeah, what is the Hava Amina? Meaning, what would I have thought without this Mishnah? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and break this question down. All right. I don't know if this is like making the question more objective, or if this is narrowing the scope. So I want to note, just referring to what we had in the previous 2 weeks. Okay, so with Chacham, actually, maybe these are 2 different questions. Okay, so I guess like with Chacham, we thought it was someone who knows a lot, and the Mishnah taught us that it's more about like the relationship to the knowledge. Okay, with Gibor, we thought it was physical strength, and the Mishnah taught us that it's about inner strength. Okay, so here, I guess maybe this is a separate question. I'm not really sure. Is Ben Zoma, I guess, endorsing our intuitive notion of wealth, but telling us how to relate to our wealth? Okay, like he did with Chachma, right? With Chachma, he never changes. Like with Chachma, we're still talking about knowledge, but he just shifted it of like, don't focus on the guy who knows a lot, focus on the guy who is seeking knowledge. Okay, or is he completely like overturning our notion of wealth? Okay, telling us that it has nothing to do with what we have. Yeah. Yeah, like he did with Gvura. Okay, maybe that's too loaded of a question. So the main question, though, I wanted is the first part. So let me just make this here. Yeah. Alex?
it might be silly to pose this question, but an additional point on the chelek part is
Yeah.
like, at what point do they need to be sameach with their chelek? Like, it
Okay.
could change. Like, what you
Yeah.
have can vary. Like, you can become wealthy or become poor. So, is it something you have to have the like happiness consistent throughout, or is it like by a certain point if you're like contented?
Okay,
Like-
that's a great question. So at what point does this standard apply? Okay, so like a person's chelek can change. Is this a like is Ben Zoma speaking of a constant state no matter what your chelek is, or is this something one should aspire to? Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, Lauren?
I'm kind of like thinking how like about the definition of Ashir, because it seems like it's not really talking about, given that like Asmech and Chelko means like happy with what you have, it kind of seems like Ashir is more about like a midah than like maybe in happiness or contentness. I guess this is kind of related to the contentness question, but or sameach, what it means. But I guess I'm kind of like adding on to Vanessa's question in terms of asking like what wealthy means in terms
Right.
of like maybe he's not really means like, and if he doesn't mean to be like what who is one who is wealthy, then why is he even saying it as a wealthy person? I
Okay,
guess.
right. So the other three are midos, whereas wealth seems like an external circumstance. Yeah. Okay. Okay. One other question, which may already be included in my previous question. Okay. So when he said, and maybe actually I'm going to include this as a sub question of Sameach V'chalko. Okay. When he says Sameach V'chalko, is the emphasis on happy with what you with your portion? Okay, as opposed to unhappy with your portion? Or is the emphasis on happy with your portion as opposed to only happy with someone else's portion? Okay. You'll see why that's going to come up later. I only thought of this question when I was reading the meforshim. Yeah. Okay, because this is not just about, see, I think you could look at this on two axes. One is like how you relate to your possessions, but then the other is how you relate to your socioeconomic standing vis-a-vis other people, you know? And I'm not sure which one he's emphasizing. Okay. So I think there's a lot of questions there. All right, I'm going to post these in the chat. Let's see. I think I'm going to go in batches here. And hopefully we can answer these. Okay. Oh, see, now Zoom is back to normal. On, what was it, Monday night when I was posting it? It tried to preserve all of the formatting. Okay, hold on a second here. Okay. There's that. I don't know why it's using little clock symbols. And then, oh, message is too long. I will do 5. And then we'll do, oh, see, now it's doing the formatting. And then we'll do these last ones. Okay, this is 6, 7, and 8. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and advise us, unless someone has like a really clear idea that they want to say right now, I think we're going to have the best success if we go right into the meforshim here. This is going to be a little difficult tonight, okay? So is anything anyone wants to say, or any observations that anyone wants to make before we go in? Yeah, tomorrow.
I'm not sure it's better to actually say this, but I feel like there's a specific idea that I've heard as an explanation of this.
Yeah.
Should I say it, or you think I should wait?
Good question. Why don't you say it? And yeah, why don't you say it? We'll have it as like a point of reference.
Okay, yeah, I think it's something like this. Maybe I'm botching it a little bit, but that when people want to be wealthy, what they want is to feel like they have everything that they need or want, and that they're like comfortable with their possessions. And that's something that is better achieved through focusing on sameach b'chalko instead of on a specific quantity of wealth.
Interesting. Okay, right. So in other words, it's a state of like lacking nothing in terms of feeling like you're lacking nothing. And so people make the mistake of thinking that they can get that through accumulation, but changing your desires or changing the way that you relate to what you do have is going to be the more surefire route, because you're not going to get there by accumulating more money. Yeah. Okay. That's a good idea. Yeah. So I actually was going to start off with a similar idea. So here's the game plan. Okay. The simplest idea of them, I only did 3 meforshim in preparation for this because I didn't have my usual Shabbos chavrusa. The Meiri, Rashi, and Rabbeinu Yonah. Okay. The Meiri is the simplest in the sense that it's the least complicated. So I'm going to start with him. Then we're going to read Rashi and Rabbeinu Yonah, and I don't know if there is a machlokus between the two or not. So we're going to read both of them and then try to understand either what they're both saying together or wherein there is a difference. And excuse me. And then what Rabbeinu Yonah does is he kind of segues to commenting on the first 3 clauses of the Mishnah together. And I don't know if that is a separate idea from this clause. Like, I don't know if he gives his idea on this clause and then he's giving us a separate idea, or if like he wants us to understand this idea in conjunction with the other 3. Okay, that's the sketch of what we're going to do. Okay, so let's start off with the Meiri. And I feel like I started with the Meiri also because I wanted to at least know that we're going to walk away with one idea. Okay, so the Meiri says like this. V'amar achar kach, he says afterwards, Eizehu Ashir, who is wealthy, etc. V'zeh emes, this is true. Ki geder ha'osher, the definition of wealth. So he's learning as the definition, not as how you get to be wealthy, but this is what wealth is hahistapkus v'habilti homaya el hamosros, is contentedness. Histapkus means like, sipuk means like provision of what is enough. There's no real good word in English that I know of for it. Actually, you know what? No, sorry. Contentedness is having enough. Okay. The habilti homaya el hamosers, and not striving after excesses. Literally not striving. Homaya is like crying out for excesses. Okay. Not like crying out for excesses. Okay, then he describes this person. Whoever has what he needs, and doesn't seek excess, who Ashir be'emes, he is truly wealthy. Even if this came to him through the toil and exertion of his hands. It promises, I guess the pasuk promises, the person who derives enjoyment from the exertion of his hands, he's promised the utmost success. V'hu omro, as it says, ashrecha ba'olam hazeh v'tov lach l'olam haba. He's fortunate in this world and it is good for him in the world to come. Ki achar shelo yivakesh hamosar, because since he doesn't seek excess, kol asher yimtza biomo desipuko yotzi sha'ar sha'osa v'rugav lavodas Hashem. Because since he doesn't seek excess and has whatever he needs every day, he will spend the rest of his hours and moments in the service of Hashem, and and he will merit in this world and in the world to come. Okay, so that is the Meiri. I'm going to actually copy and paste this into the chat so that we can look at the questions and see what he answers and what he doesn't answer. Okay, and once again, it messed up the formatting. Oh man. Okay. Well, I can't get rid of the underline. Okay, there we go. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, that is the Meiri. Okay. So I guess it sounds like his definition is either similar or identical with what Tamar said, right? That although I think there's one more note here. So he is saying that it means that you are not crying out for excess. Okay, so so that is in line with what Tamar was the idea Tamar was saying. Okay, but I think there is another important note here. Like, I guess what is the standard of I guess how would you describe the chelik that he's talking about here? Like, how would you measure the chelik, and how would you know what your chelik is? Let's go to our sub questions. What does simcha mean in this? Let's try answer question number 4. What does sameach b'chalko mean? What does simcha mean? What does chelik refer to? Like what's included? How do you do this? At one point does this apply? And then is this like that you're happy with your portion, or is it happy with your portion and not other people's? Yeah, Tamar.
So I feel like he's defining chelik in a specific way.
Right.
Which I would say is that it's what you need, and I guess if you have it.
Right. Exactly. Right. So he's not defining chelik as what you have. Okay, actually, I'm going to summarize this up here. Or down here, I should say. Okay, so summary of Meiri. Okay, so he's defines. Ooh, that is not the right font. Tisk. Okay, we want 11 and Calibri. Okay, so he defines chelik not as what you have, but as what you need. Okay, this to me is like a chelik, like poseach es yedecha masbia l'chol chai ratzon. Like God provides the satisfies the desires of every living thing. Sounds like it means your actually I would say yeah, i.e. your needs versus your wants. Okay, okay, good. That's I think that is something that unless I'm mistaken, Tamar, that was not in your definition because your definition right. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so then he's also saying, so is he defining the simcha? Doesn't comment on it explicitly here, right? Yeah, Tamar?
Well, he talks about deriving enjoyment in the middle, but I feel like at the beginning and the end, he's talking about not trying to get more. And I think that simcha is kind of like, it seems like he's defining it as like not trying to get other stuff.
Right. Okay, good. So he doesn't directly define the quality of the simcha. Okay. But he does state its opposite. Okay, namely like crying out for excesses. Okay. And I think the other thing he does is he frames it as relating to your needs as a means of avodas Hashem. Okay, as opposed to a means to something else. All right, because that's how he gets that's how he fits it into the pasuk. Okay, that the pasuk is describing some. So in other words, yeah. So actually, let's segue from here into the answer to the pasuk. I think this will make it clear. So what purpose does the pasuk serve for him? It's a tricky question. I sense it, but I don't have it in clear terms. Yeah, Ayala?
Is it like showing why this is such a good thing? Like why why Ashir is such an important quality?
Interesting. Because it allows you to get the all the goods?
Yeah, and all Haba specific.
Right. Yeah, that is definitely a possibility. The way he frames it is betachlis hahatzlacha. Right. So it does seem to be saying that this guy's going to get the best success. Yeah, Vanessa?
I'm sorry, it's a bit hard to hear. I'm in the car, but I'm wondering why the Meiri is saying it's what what if someone doesn't have their needs? That's still their portion, right? They still have a portion, but what if it's not enough for his needs? Like what if he's poor?
Right. Sounds like the Meiri is saying that if you are poor, if you're poor enough to not have your needs, then you cannot have this. Then you're not wealthy. Right. And I think, I think that's an interesting thing that we tend to forget when we talk about, when we oversell Sameach B'chalko, that that when Ben Zoma says who is wealthy, one who's Sameach B'chalko, he's not denying the existence of poverty on his shot, right? Like, in other words, once you have wealth, you can also have poverty. So there is a state where you can't be Sameach because you don't have your chelak, Question of what that person is supposed to do is a valid question, but I think the Meiri, if you ask the Meiri, what about a person who doesn't have his needs? You'd say, yeah, you can't. That person is not wealthy. Yeah. So the way I'm thinking about the function of the pasuk, I don't know if I'm saying what Ayala is saying. Let me just try talking it out before I write it. That I do think that it's completing the definition, because it's not just that you are, okay, hold on just a second. Maybe this is it. Yeah, meaning he's not just saying like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stereotype here. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm gonna use it as like, this might be a straw man, okay, but like I do think that there is a certain model of sameach b'cholko that is like a let's say like an ascetic type thing where like, you know, like we talked about like pre-shus earlier, like detachment from worldly pleasures, or let's say like a I don't know, like a Buddhist idea of sameach b'cholko, of like acceptance, you know, or you know, I that the point I'm trying to make is like there is an idea of sameach b'cholko that is not tied to avodas Hashem, and I think what this pasuk clarifies is that the pasuk clarifies that we're not just talking about someone who is content with his needs for their own sake or for the sake of something else, but specifically someone who is content with his needs and therefore can maximize the pursuit of true success in olam hazeh and olam haba, in olam hazeh and olam haba. Like, let's say this is a kind of weird example, but let's say you have someone who like their dopamine is messed up, okay, and they are capable of being happy in whatever condition, of being content in whatever position they're in. You know, I don't think that's what we're talking about here. You know, that person is not necessarily going to use his excess time for avodas Hashem. The reason why we value sameach, and then again, same thing with like the monk who has achieved like enlightenment, where he's able to like live on a bowl of rice or whatever, you know, every day. Like that person, I don't think is the person is the wealth that that Ben Zoma is talking about. I think wealth means you have like enough money for the purpose of money, and the purpose of money is as a means to be able to serve Hashem. So as long as you're at that state, then you're good. And being sameach b'cholko, see, maybe that's it. Let me try this out. Okay, is true wealth means having enough. Okay, enough must be vis-a-vis some value system, and our value system is avodas Hashem. And anything beyond, sorry, if a person, to the extent that a person craves beyond what is necessary for avodas Hashem, it will actually detract from his ability to serve Hashem. Okay, so like really, let's say you have a guy who's a millionaire, but he wants more, so he actually doesn't have the wealth. Like it's almost like to use here's another weird analogy. Like let's say you have $1 million, but it's but your bank account is frozen and you can't access it. So do you really have that money or not? You know, in potential you have it, but you don't actually have it because you're not able to use it. You know, so here too, it's like if a person is so preoccupied with with like getting more that he's not using what he has for its proper purpose, then like does he really have that wealth, or is it the opposite? Is his desire for the wealth like making him not able to use his wealth? In other words, like if he's constantly driven to make more, is that desire actually like detracting from his wealth, insofar as wealth is described as having enough like to do the good that wealth should be used for? I don't know if this is making any sense. Yeah, did that I mean, I don't, yeah, Lauren?
I think that makes sense. I'm just curious, do you think he's telling a person to like change what their needs are, like to reframe what you really think your needs should be, and then use that,
Good
and
question.
that will make you wealthy, I guess?
So
if you have
I think
realistic needs.
right. So I think practically speaking, there are two things you can do. Okay, one is to make sure that that what you think are your needs are actually your needs, and not wants disguised as needs. Okay, so like again, this is an extreme example, and we can spend a lot of time in this, but I think I did an episode once of the Stoic Jew podcast of talking about how Yaakov Avinu, when he's let me actually just get the puzzle here. Oops. Okay, so Yaakov Avinu in Bereshis 28:20, he makes a neder, and he says, yeah, 28:20. Vayidar Yaakov neder lemor. Yaakov took a vow saying, Im yihye Elokim imadi, if God will be with me, ushmarani baderach hazeh asher anochi holech, and if God will be with me and will watch over me on the path that I go, v'nasan li lechem lechol begalil bosh, and he gives me bread to eat and clothing to wear. So I think it was Avram ben Rambam. Let's check. Says, yeah, he says, Umaro v'nasan li lechem lechol begalil bosh. The statement of Yaakov that if you will give me bread to eat and a garment to wear, histapkus atzum. He uses that same word as the Meiri. Histapkus is being content with what is enough. V'tzimtzum nafsho. And like the literally the constrictedness of his soul, hakavuda al ha'hechrachi b'chaim, which is focused on what is necessary in life. And I think Shadal said something as well, also, or maybe not. No, maybe it wasn't Shadal. So in other words, I think most of us, if you said what is it that you need, I think we would say probably more than bread and garments. So like. I don't think it's black or white. Is this a need or is this not a need? Like I think, for example, in our society, having like, heat built into our homes is like a need, even though in most times throughout history, like people had to go and like get firewood and heat their own homes, So like, I think there's like a hierarchy here, but I think there's a constant process that you could do, like of like making sure that what you think you need, you actually do need, and it's not just something that you want. Okay, and then the second thing you could do is take practical Mishleic steps to secure the goods which meet your needs. There might be more that you could do than that, but and then I guess the third thing is to make sure that you are relating to your needs as a means for avodas Hashem and not something else. Right. So let's take something that is like, relatively measurable objectively. Let's say like nutritional needs. You can be someone who is very health conscious and is like making sure that you're only eating what you need for your nutrition and you're not just indulging in stuff for like pleasure. But the question is, why are you doing it? Like, are you viewing this as like fuel for your avodas Hashem, or are you doing it so that you can like look attractive, or that you could do it so that you can like just maximize your lifespan, So I think these are the three areas of like practical application that emerge from this. But if anyone thinks of more, then let me know.
At the end, it seems like he's saying that like you just do what you need, so that way any rest of your moments you can just spend it learning. Is he saying like spend it learning Torah, like or doing mitzvos? Like
yes,
kind of seems like
yeah.
Like I guess because the last point I guess that you were saying, like I don't know if he's necessarily saying that all your endeavors should be towards avodas Hashem in terms of like your work or whatever, but maybe it's saying like you do what you need and then the rest for avodas Hashem.
I don't get the distinction you're making. Say it again.
I guess the distinction is saying like you make your parnasa to get what you need, and then the rest of the time spend it learning and service to Hashem.
Right.
Versus like doing everything that you do in service to Hashem, including the parnasa. Maybe the parnasa is in service to Hashem. It is in service to Hashem because you're also just recognizing your physical needs. Right.
Yeah. And I think the phrase he uses that really clues us in on this is Kol asher yimtza biomo de sipuko. He has whatever he needs every day, and like, I know this is a whole, I don't want to call it a tangent because it is related, but like, you read about the Tanaim, who would, like just do these simple jobs of like, manual labor, or like Rabbi Moskowitz would always quote, I don't know, whether this is like folklore or true, that the Chafetz Chaim would like, have his store and like open it in order to make enough money for that day, and then like close it and then spend the rest of the time learning, So like I do think it's a big question, which I don't think we should go into right now, of like, isn't there a reality to, I don't know, to like making enough to like save for like a rainy day, or like I think there is you could easily see a person saying, okay, well, I have enough for my needs, but like I also want to provide for my children's needs, and then I have grandchildren, so I want to provide for their needs. But then the question there is like that could go infinitely, and clearly he's not advocating for that, right? In other words, once you are going beyond your needs, and I'm assuming, even though he doesn't say this exactly, that the needs of your immediate household, of whoever it is that you're providing for, I think once you're beyond that, then it is truly infinite. So that's why I don't think he can be even talking about that. But I do think that a person could easily like convince themselves that they are doing this for, future generations of their offspring, and then convince themselves that is for avodas Hashem, because you're securing their means. But like, I maybe this is where he's drawing the line, where he's saying like, look, at the end of the day, you have one life, and you are responsible more to yourself than for unborn future generations, and like you provide for yourself, you provide for your children, and your spouse, to have the, your household basically. But then beyond that, like you are chayav, you're obligated philosophically and halakhically to like serve God, not to provide for others to serve God, like you have to serve God. So like that should be your priority, and that's where you draw the line. And I think I do think that there are a lot of well-meaning individuals that think that they're doing what he's saying, which is serving God by providing for all this other stuff, but I think it's a complicated question. Like, let's say I'm making money to give to tzedakah. Well, that is avodas Hashem, but like, I'm also not learning. Like, what if I could use that time for learning, or for like doing chesed with my body, like actually like, helping people in a concrete way, as I don't know how to work out all these details. That's why this is a very difficult topic, because the devil is somewhat in the details, but I do think that what we should try to get is like the broad picture, like targets, and I think that he does provide like a broad picture target. Okay, shall we move on? I'll take that as a yes. Okay, so now Rashi. Now, like I said, Rashi and Rabbeinu Yonah say things that are similar, but so I'm going to read both of them, and then I'm going to ask you if you think that they're saying the similar things or different things. Okay, Rashi says like this. He says, "Hasamech b'chelko b'chelek she'Hakadosh Baruch Hu mazmin lo." Namely, he's happy with the portion that God prepared for him. Hakol notel ba'ayin yafa. He should accept all of it with. Now, ayin yafa means generosity, and oh, hold on a second. I added in brackets, he should accept all of it with appreciation of God's generosity. Okay, because it's weird to say for me, he should like take it with generosity. Like, I assume it means he should take it with an awareness of generosity. Okay, now it says Nun Aleph, which is like a different version of Rashi. I think this is just a different version of Rashi that elaborates on the idea. I don't think this is a different idea within Rashi. So he says, alternate version of Rashi. Sheyeshlo cherus nefesh v'lev tov. He has freedom of soul and gladness. Okay, literally, lev tov is like gladness of heart. Be'oso chelek she'Hakadosh Baruch Hu mazmin lo, in that portion that HaKadosh Baruch Hu prepared for him. Bein tov, bein ra, bein rav, bein ma'at. Whether good or bad, whether a lot or a little. Ve'eno mitzta'er lihios rodif v'lahut le'etzor v'liknos yoser mechalko. He should not pain himself to chase and clamor to amass and acquire more than his portion. Ve'ilu lo haya samech miyagia kapav shehu ochel, my ashrei ika. And if he were not content with the toil of his hands, which he eats, what fortunate is there? Meaning, how could you call him fortunate? Meaning that the guy in the pasuk in Tehillim must be content with what he has, because if he weren't content, how could you really call him fortunate? So in other words, he's trying to say that the pasuk is like alluding to the person who's content with what he has. Okay, then he says, afilu ashir sheba ashirim, even if he is the richest person, v'doeg ve'etzev b'chelko, but he is worried and pained about his portion, harihu ke'ani shebanim, then he is no different than the poorest of the poor. Ella vadai ba'ochlo b'simcha ka'amar. Rather, this is certainly, meaning the pasuk is certainly talking about where he eats his portion in joy. Umidaka mishabach lekra, and since the pasuk praises him in this manner, alma ashir karile, then therefore he's called wealthy. So in other words, Rashi's trying to show that the pasuk is like supporting Ben Zoma's definition. He's saying that the fact that this guy is called Ashre implies that he is eating besimcha, that he's content with what he has, because otherwise you couldn't say Ashre. And then the fact that that the pasuk is praising him for this means that he's called wealthy. Now, again, I don't know how he gets the word wealthy because the pasuk doesn't say that, but he is trying to like say that the pasuk is a proof for this. Okay, then he gives like a little curveball here. Ashrecha ba'olam hazeh, he's fortunate or praiseworthy in this world. Shelo titztarech labrios, that he's not dependent on other people. Okay, meaning for tzedakah, presumably. Ula olam haba, and he's praiseworthy in olam haba, demitoch shehu nehenem yagio, because since he's enjoying the labor of his own hands, lo bali de gezel, then he's not going to steal. V'nochel shnei olamos, and he will inherit both worlds. Okay, meaning that he's not doing anything to jeopardize his olam haba. Okay, now hold on to this thought, okay, and let's read Rabbeinu Yonah, and then we'll pit them against each other. Rabbeinu Yonah says like this: Eizehu Ashir hasamech b'chalko, who is wealthy, one who's happy with his portion. Ha'omer, one who says, Dai li bechalki achar she'ani yachol lefarnes es atmi ve'es beisi v'lasok b'torah, ma li lemamon acher, ach lios li k'dei tzarchi u'lahakim es devar Hashem. So my portion is enough. Since I have the ability, so this is the person who's in the Mishnah. My portion is enough. Since I have the ability to sustain myself and my household and to be involved in Torah, what need have I for someone else's money? Rather, I am content to have enough money for my needs and to uphold the word of Hashem. Because someone who is not content with his portion, anihu, someone who is not content with his portion and not satisfied with what Hashem gave him, is poor. Like it says explicitly in the pasuk in Mishlei 15:15, all the days of the poor person are bad, but one who is good of heart is constantly partying. Mishtatami, constant party. Ratzlomar, meaning to say, hamisave lamamon, someone who has a taiva for who lusts for money. Kol yamav raim, all his days are bad. He ohev kesef lo yispa kesef, because it says in Koheles, one who loves money will not be content with money. Ach tov leiv v'samech b'chalko, but someone who is glad of heart or good of heart and he's content with his portion. Kol yamav heim tovim, all his days are good. Kamoha ose mishtatami, like someone who's partying all the time. Al kain, therefore, mida tova he ad me'od liyosamech b'chalko. It is a very good trait to be content with your portion. V'hu nikra ashir, and this is a person is called wealthy. Since Hashem gave him what he needs to sustain himself and to be involved in Torah and mitzvos. What profit is there for man in all he toils? That's a quote from Koheles, except to fulfill the Torah and the mitzvos. Okay, then one more. He says, as it is stated, and he quotes the pasuk in Tehillim. He says, so first of all, he acknowledges a question. There's no proof in this pasuk that being content with one's portion is called wealthy. Okay, so it's not proving it. But rather, a person is fortunate with this midah, fortunate / happy with this midah, or I guess praiseworthy with this midah. When he does not desire to amass more money, and he hates gifts. Yagia kapav ochel, he eats from the labor of his hands, umistapikbo, and he finds it sufficient. Kumo hasamech b'choko, like a person who is samech b'choko, she'ein ratzon ela b'kdei chiyuso, whose desire is only enough for him to live. Okay, so that was a lot. I'm going to copy and paste this into the chat in case you want to see it, if this fits. Oh, it doesn't fit. Okay, so first is Rashi part 1 and Rashi part 2. Okay, then is Rabbeinu Yonah. I bet part 1 is not even going to fit. So I'm just going to err on the side of caution. Part 1, and then Rabbeinu Yonah, part 2. Okay. Yeah. So first of all, I know that was a lot, but did you get the sense that Rabbeinu Yonah and Rashi are agreeing or disagreeing, and why? Maybe I'll put Rashi on the screen since we just read Rabbeinu Yonah. Yeah, Vanessa?
I don't know if I want to comment on them disagreeing or not, but I think they have different definitions. I think Rashi is saying that like you should be happy no matter what you get, like whether you're poor or not. And the I'm sorry, Rabbeinu Yonah,
Rabbeinu
right?
Yonah, yeah.
Rabbeinu Yonah is saying like if you have your minimal needs, like not he's talking about
Oh, your audio cut out, Vanessa.
if you're like breaking even and you're able to function enough to fill your they have different
Okay.
definitions of wealthy. I'm not so great at articulating
Yeah,
it.
okay,
But
no.
you get my
I
point.
think you're hitting on the correct point. Okay, so I do think that this is why I think that they disagree. Same thing that Vanessa said. Rashi has this phrase here, which is he has freedom of soul and gladness in the portion that Hakadosh Baruch Hu in that portion that Hakadosh Baruch Hu prepared for him, whether good or bad, whether a lot or a little. Okay. Whereas Rabbeinu Yonah constantly emphasizes, let's just get it here. Since I have the ability to sustain myself and my household and to be involved in Torah, he also says I have enough for my needs and to uphold the word of Hashem. And then he also says, God gave him what he needs to sustain himself and be involved in Torah and mitzvos, and then to involved in Torah and mitzvos. So it sounds like, sounds like Rashi is talking about being content with whatever portion you have, whereas Rabbeinu Yonah is talking like the Meiri did, which is you have enough to meet your needs and to be involved in avodas Hashem. Okay, and further proof of this is a good litmus test that I heard from Rav Pesach. Rav Pesach says this a lot, or said this a lot when I was in Ashir. That when you're learning the Rishonim, how do you know whether you're projecting onto their ideas or whether you're actually understanding what they intended? And he said one of the ways you can test it is ask yourself, if I wanted to write this idea myself, how would I say it? And then compare that to what they actually wrote, So I feel like if Rashi were writing what Rabbeinu Yonah said, like let's say Rashi meant that God gave you enough to do Torah and mitzvos, Rashi would have mentioned somewhere along the line Torah and mitzvos. The fact that he doesn't mention that, and he doesn't even mention needs, he doesn't mention parnasa. He just says whatever God gave you, good or bad, to me implies that Rashi is talking about being able to be content with whatever you have, even if you're like in dire poverty, which is a much more difficult sell than Rabbeinu Yonah and the Meiri. Although he does throw in at the end that he says that this person is not dependent on his livelihood for his livelihood on other people. So perhaps Rashi is saying that no, because this would also mean, like according to Rashi, if you are dependent on other people, see that's why I feel like this is a curveball, that he's not dependent on other people. I'm not sure what to make of that, but I feel like from this first part of the Rashi, especially if you take the minimal Rashi, which just says that he accepts whatever God gave him with a generous eye, that's unqualified. That means whatever God gave him. That says nothing about parnasa. Okay, so let's actually start with Rabbeinu Yonah because it's the most similar to the Meiri. Okay, and then we'll tackle Rashi if we so choose. Okay, so what I guess is the same and what is different? What is the idea that Rabbeinu Yonah is getting at here? I feel like it is similar to the Meiri in some ways, but different in other ways. And I think the clue is the hard part about what is he doing with the pasuk from Tehillim. And again, I love the fact, Rishonim don't do this enough. At least a lot of them, where they like explicitly say, like they explicitly say, don't worry. Like I see your question and I agree with you. This pasuk is not, proving the definition. This is not proving that this is called wealthy. Let me read that last part again. He says, there's no proof in this pasuk that being content with one's portion is called wealthy. Rather, that a person, actually, I'll say, rather, it is saying that a person is fortunate with this midah when he does not desire to amass more money, and he hates gifts. He eats from the labor of his hands, and he finds it sufficient, just like one who is content with his portion, whose desire is only for that which is enough for him to live. And also, I think another clue is earlier when he says, therefore, it is a very good trait to be content with one's portion. And this person is called wealthy since God gave him what he needs to sustain himself and to be involved in Torah and mitzvos. It's a tough one. So let me try something out here, okay? And I have not worked this out totally, but let's go back to Rבינו Yonah on Chacham, okay? Because I think he's pulling a similar move. Rבינו Yonah on Chacham said, the non-Jewish sages teach that one who knows all branches of Chachma, if he does not love Chachma, he is not wise, but rather foolish, since he doesn't love Chachma, which is knowledge. However, one who loves it and yearns for it, even though he doesn't know anything, is called Chacham, because no matter what, he will attain Chachma, since his desire and will are in it. Then he says later on, regarding this, Ben Zoma says, which one is wise? One who learns from everyone, that he loves and desires Chachma so much that he seeks it from every person. He will even learn from someone who only knows one thing, and then he will succeed and he will become intelligent. That is why he is called Chacham, as it is stated from all my teachers. I became intelligent, etc. Okay, so by Chacham, what Rבינו Yonah did is he says there is a real definition of Chacham, which is someone who knows a lot, but there's also a midah of Chacham, which is learning from everyone. In other words, there's an objective perfection of being a Chacham, which is measured by how much you know. But then there's the midah, the I don't know if you want to call it the ethical trait or the character trait that is most conducive to becoming an actual Chacham. So I think he's doing a similar move here. There is objective wealth, okay, but then there's the midah that most facilitates objective wealth. Okay, so I'm just going to type this out because it's easier. So just as in the case of Chachma, there are two things. One, the objective perfection of being a Chacham, which is knowing knowledge, okay? And two, the midah, which most brings you to that perfection, which is halomed mikol adam. So too, in the case of wealth, there are two things. One is the objective perfection of wealth, which is having enough money to meet your needs and serve God. And then two, the midah which most brings you to that perfection, okay, which is sameach b'chalko. So that's how he was learning Eizehu, which one, meaning if you're looking at different people with different character dispositions, which one is most primed to become a Chacham? Not the guy who knows a lot right now but doesn't love Chachma, rather the guy who loves Chachma so much that he'll seek it from anyone, and he won't let his ego get in the way, and he'll just like seek Chachma no matter what. That guy is destined to become an actual Chacham. So too, if you're looking at people, who is really wealthy? Is it the guy who has a lot of money but like clamors for more? Or is it the guy who is content with what he has? So he's saying, no, it's the guy who's content with what he has, because the real measure of objective wealth is having enough for avodas Hashem. And if you're content with what you have, then you're not going to be looking for all this other stuff that is going to detract from your ability to use it for avodas Hashem. So I think that this is very, very close to, if not identical with the idea from the Meiri, but he's expressing it clear that there is that we're talking about character traits that are conducive to certain perfections. What do you think about that? Yeah, Lauren?
I'm wondering if I think that maybe he's different than the Meiri in the sense that he's telling you how, like, maybe more about making it happy with what you have already, not think so much for what you need, but maybe just think about focus on what you have, and that could bring you to that desire where you will really have what you need.
That could be as well. Okay, that could be as well. So let me just write this explicitly. Okay, so one could learn the Rבינו Yonah as an elaboration on the Meiri. Alternatively, Rבינו Yonah could be talking about. Sorry, it's possible. Hold on a second. It's possible that the Meiri is the Meiri's conception of sameach b'chalko is confined to a chelik that meets your needs, whereas Rבינו Yonah is talking about someone who is able to be sameach b'chalko even no matter what his chelik is, because that character trait will be most conducive to becoming a person who is truly wealthy when his needs are met. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I think also maybe like even just focusing instead of like thinking about what you need, just focus on Sameach B'Chelko, and that could bring you to actually figuring out what the true needs are. Maybe
Okay.
also.
Okay, so perhaps he's going even further and saying that instead of focusing on your needs, just focus on being Sameach B'Chelko, and you'll get there even more. Yeah, that's totally possible. I think there's a possibility. Okay. Now, before we go into Rashi, there is one more Rabbeinu Yonah. Okay, and this is where he ties all three together. So he says like this. So okay, I know I quote this pasuk like in every shiur. My two favorite pasukim in Tanakh are Yirmiyahu 9:22 and 23. So the full thing says, I put them in bold here, but he's going to quote them. Ko amar Hashem, thus says Hashem, Ayis hala chacham b'chachmaso, v'ayis hala hagibur b'giburaso, ayis hala ashir b'ashro. Let not the wise man praise himself for his wisdom. Let not the mighty man praise himself for his might. Let not the mighty man praise himself for his might. Let not the wealthy person praise himself for his wealth. Only in this may the wealthy person praise himself. Haskell v'yado osi. Comprehending and knowing me, ki ani Hashem oseh chesed mishpat utzedakah ba'aretz ki be'eleh chavasti nu Hashem. For comprehending and knowing me, for I am Hashem who does kindness, justice, and righteousness in the land, for in these is my desire, saith Hashem. Okay, so here's what Rambam Yonah says. He says like this. I'm just going to read it in English. No, I'm not. Shloshim mindos elu sidron Ben Zoma keseder Yirmiyahu Hanavi. So Ben Zoma arranged these three characteristics in the same order as Yirmiyahu Hanavi. Chachma, v'gvura, v'ha'osher. Wisdom, might, and wealth. Kamoshenemar, as it says, Komar ad Hashem, and then he quotes the pasuk. So he says, Hiktim, now he's talking about Yirmiyahu, well, and Ben Zoma. Hiktim chachma legvura, mipnei shehi ma'ala amitis uvenefesh hasichlis uveguf shochenes. He placed wisdom before might because it is a real virtue in the rational soul, which dwells in the body. Velokein hagvura she'einena ki'im beguf levad, which is not the case with might, which is only in the body alone. Okay. So in other words, chachma is a real perfection of your soul, whereas gvura, physical might, is just a perfection of your body. Okay, then he says the osher. Okay, achi me'ula min ha'osher, but perfection, but might is superior to wealth. Shagvura hi begufo davar kayam kol yamei odenu chai, because might is in a person's body for as long as he is alive. Va'osher chutz leguf hu davar hanevad, whereas wealth is external to the body and is something that can be lost. Ki yase osher. Because you can make money and then halfway through your life, others can steal it. Others can steal it from him. Okay, the one who makes this point the best is the Rambam. So I'm just going to read from the Rambam in the Mora Nevuchim 354. He says the ancient and modern philosophers have shown that man can acquire four kinds of perfection. The first kind, the lowest, which most people spend most of their days trying to acquire, is perfection of material possessions. That's wealth, possession of money, garments, furniture, servants, land, and the like. The possession of the title of a great king also belongs to this class. There is no close actual connection between this possession and its possessor at all. It is a totally circumstantial relationship, and most of the pleasure derived from it is totally imaginary. And by that, I'm referring to when a person says, this is my house, this is my servant, this is my money, and these are my hosts and armies. For when he examines himself, he will find that all these things are external, and their qualities are entirely independent of the possessor. When, therefore, that relation ceases, he who has been a great king may one morning find that there is no difference between him and the lowest person, and yet no change has taken place in the things which were ascribed to him. The philosophers have shown that he whose sole aim in all his exertions and endeavors is the possession of this kind of perfection only seeks perfectly imaginary and transient things, and even if these remain his property all his lifetime, they do not give him any perfection. So, in other words, perfection of possessions is inferior for several reasons. One is it's not a perfection of you yourself. It doesn't even, certainly not of your mind, but also not even of your body. So it's completely external to you. The pleasure you get from it is imaginary, right? We say, this is my stuff. Because that's not a relationship that exists in reality. And also you could lose it really quickly. Whereas if it's a perfection of your body, at least it is connected to you somehow, even though it's not the real you, it's the vessel that the real you is in. Okay, so then he says, okay. I'm gonna just make a little space here. Okay, then he ties them all together, and this part I'm also not 100% clear on, but hopefully we can make sense of it together. Okay, he says like this: V'zehu she'anavi amar levayis halal adam begimel midos halalu. This is why the prophet says that a person should not praise himself for these three qualities. Chalak Ben Zoma v'amar. Ben Zoma qualified this, saying, Ki yesh la'adam be'elu hamidos tzad sheyihi lo below toreach v'amal v'yishala behen. There is an aspect in these characteristics that a person has without toil and exertion, and he may praise himself with them. Now keep your eye on that. Okay, meaning that that you generally can't praise yourself for these three things, but then there's an aspect which he says you have without toil and exertion, and therefore you can praise yourself. Okay, what are they? Where is it in Hebrew? B'chachma lios laman mikol adam. With wisdom is learning from every person. He az tavin yavin yiras Hashem, because then he will understand the fear of Hashem. Ve'im bezet toreach. There's no toil. Ki chachma he, because it's wisdom. Ve'ena malacha, and it's not work. Okay, whatever that means. Bigvura, with might. Lichbosh es yitzro, to conquer his inclination. V'limchol mitoch hakas, and to forgive out of anger. Okay, meaning to pardon someone and not get angry at them. Ki bazeh yishalo. In this too, he may praise himself. Ki mitocha yira he oseh, because he's acting out of fear of God. V'zehu she'amar Shlomo al v'shalom seichel adam heri chapo v'tifarto avur al pasha. This is what Shlomo said: man's intelligence delays his anger, but its splendor is to forgive wrongdoing. And Rabbeinu Yonah on that pasuk in Mishlei basically says that if you use your mind, you'll realize that it's not worth getting angry at all. And then Ashir, with wealth, hasamech b'chalko, to be content with one's portion. Achar she'ein chefto rak lilmod u'l'kayim hamitzvos, since his desire is only to learn and fulfill the mitzvos. There's that reference again, right? That he is talking about the objective standard of having enough money. Once he has enough for his living and livelihood, he's content and he recognizes that the rest is nothingness. Okay, sorry, Lauren. There goes your idea. He's not saying that you should be samech b'chalko irrespective of your needs. Yeah, I think that clinches it. Meaning he's saying once you have enough to fulfill your needs, where are we here? To be content with your portion, since his desire is only to learn to fulfill the mitzvahs, and once he has enough for his livelihood, his living and his livelihood, he's content and recognizes that the rest is hevel, is nothingness. The Ashir hazeh, this wealthy person, yishala b'ashro, maybe praise himself for his wealth. Ki kol elu hadvarim him yedias habore, because all these things are knowledge of the Creator, as it is stated, and then he quotes the final pasuk. But only in this may one praise himself, comprehending and knowing me, for I am Hashem who does kindness, justice, and righteousness in the land. For in these is my desire, says Hashem. So the question is, what is he talking about here? Yeah, Tamar.
Specifically, I was going to ask, what does this have to do with toil and exertion?
Yeah, right. What does he mean by toil and exertion? It's almost like a code word, right? So he is saying that there is okay, just to reiterate here, he's saying, let me actually summarize this here. Okay. Summary of Rabbeinu Yonah, part 2. Okay, so he's saying that Ben Zoma is following Yirmiyahu in enumerating these three qualities. However, he's making a subdivision. Okay, there are aspects of Chachma, Gvura, the Osher that you cannot praise yourself for, but there are also aspects of the three that you can praise yourself for, since a person has them without toil and exertion. Okay, that's one clue, and they all constitute knowledge of the Creator, for which a person can praise himself. Okay, so he says, Chachma that is attained without toil and exertion is learning from every person. Gvura that is attained without toil and exertion is is conquering your inclination and anger specifically. And then Osher, that is attained without toil and exertion, is being content with what you have as long as you have enough to serve God. So the question is, like, what is he talking about? Yeah, Ayala? I don't know if you're talking and the reception is bad and we can't hear you.
Maybe say that like exertion.
Hear you now.
Oh, I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I was saying maybe that like toil, physical exertion is like learning a skill or something that you need like a ability for, and like you have to like be able to learn it kind of.
Okay.
But these three traits that you're describing here, or these three things, are kind of like changing your worldview to be more in line with reality. And that's what like knowledge of Hashem.
Okay.
And that changing your worldview is something that everyone can do. It's not like only people who have a specific knack for it.
Okay. All right. That's good. Okay. So I think that is a candidate for an answer. My answer is very similar. Anyone else have any approach? Yeah. Tamar?
I just wanted to maybe, this is less of an idea, I think.
Sure.
Just that these things are knowledge of the creator. I think it seems like he's saying, I don't know, I can't see the full text right now, but it seems like he's saying that the reason that you can praise yourself for this is really the thing at the end.
Yeah.
These are some expression of Haskell Vedosi.
Yeah, I think so also. Side note, by the way, the Rashbat, and in fact, I'm going to show this to you. The Rashbat, which we have not, I don't think we've done the Rashbat in shiur. I've learned it with Isaiah every week, I think, but it really is like its own thing. So he spends, let me see if I can find this. He quotes the pasuk in Yirmiyahu. Yeah, so from here, Valzeh Amar Yirmiyahu, he quotes the pasuk, and then he spends all of this proving that when the pasuk says knowledge of God, it doesn't actually mean knowledge of God intellectually, it means fear of God, which is like means serving God, you know? So, yeah, he goes on and on about that. So I'm getting the sense that that is what Rביnu Yonah means as well, especially because he did talk, he keeps talking about serving God. So let me try this here, okay? And I'm going to try and incorporate what Ayala said and what I'm thinking as well. Actually, I'll say what I'm thinking first. So Ayala said that these are all aspects of Chachma, Gevurah, and Osher that don't require. Ayala made the distinction between learning a skill versus just changing your worldview, and changing your worldview is something that anyone can do. The way I look at it is that there are aspects of Chachma, Gevurah, and Osher that are dependent on external circumstances that you have to like extract from the external world, so to speak, you know, through factors that are not entirely within your control. And if you were to praise yourself for that, then that would not be warranted because you can't take credit for that. But the three things that he's talking about are entirely within your bechira, meaning that if I learn from somebody, if I learn from, whether I learn from a certain situation or a certain person, that's entirely within my control. And same thing with governing my internal world and conquering my yetzer and being content with what I have. So like those things, because they are internal, then I can take credit for them. It's like Hakol bidei shamayim chutz miyir shamayim. Hold on just 1 second. I'm gonna stop this recording. Okay, what I was saying was that what was I saying? Hold on just 1 second. If someone wants to remind me what I was saying.
About free will.
These things.
Oh yeah, free will. Thank you. Yeah, Hakol bidei shamayim chutz miyir shamayim. Everything is in the hands of heaven except for fear of heaven, right? That and fear of heaven means your free will and how you use it. So if you were to praise yourself about any other acquisition that is dependent on God in any way, So then that praise, that self-praise would not be warranted. But if you're praising yourself for something that A, is truly a human perfection, and B, is entirely within your control, then you actually can praise yourself. I'm not saying that you should praise yourself, but I'm saying like a person could take credit for that, so to speak. So what I'm emphasizing is the ability to learn from let's say the chachma that you get from God, right? Like you can't praise yourself for the chachma of the Torah that God gave at Har Sinai, like you didn't get that, but you can praise yourself for using your mind in whatever circumstances you're in to learn, from whoever you're at. Or let's say like your strength. You can't praise yourself for like your genetics, but you can praise yourself for your exercise of bechira over your internal world. And then lastly, the external, with your wealth, there's so many things in your material circumstances that are dependent on things other than yourself. But being happy with what you have is dependent on you. So since these things are, let me just going to write this down. I know I kind of deviated from what I was saying. So you can only really praise yourself for that which A, is totally within your control, and B, is a human perfection related to knowledge of God. Okay. Therefore, these three aspects of these three qualities are not candidates, that's the wrong word, are valid subjects for, or valid acquisitions for self-praise, whereas all the aspects of a person's chachma, gvura, the osher, that are dependent on factors outside of oneself, a person doesn't have the right to take credit for, either because God is responsible, or because they don't actually add to a person's perfection, like physical strength, or like money beyond what your needs are. Okay, what do you think of that? The only little sticking point, yeah, Tamara, go ahead.
One thing I like about this explanation is that I guess I wasn't really thinking about the aspect of praising, and then I think the idea of this being something that you can sort of take credit for because it's good and you did it.
Yeah,
those are important elements there.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I think taking credit is a good way to say it. Take credit for. Yeah, the only slight sticking point here is I feel like this would be a lot better if the Sameach B'Chelko were regardless of what chelik you have, not having your needs met. I guess the only thing though is that you can't praise God. Let's say you only have X amount of material possessions that are not enough for your needs to be able to serve God. I don't think you could praise yourself for that in terms of saying that this is an acquisition that I have that is related to Yedias Hashem, because it's not enough to give you Yedias Hashem. So maybe that's how he's getting it. In other words, stuff that you're able to use to praise God with is only stuff that you can actually use for knowledge of God. And if you don't have enough for your needs, let's say you can't study Torah because you're in dire poverty or you're starving to death, you can't praise God for giving, you can't praise yourself, not praise God. You can't praise yourself for, look at this great excellence I have, because you don't have it. Yeah, Tamar?
Could you repeat what question you're answering right now?
I'm trying to explain what Rביnu Yonah is getting at here. And loosely what he's trying to get at, he's trying to say that Ben Zoma is acting as a commentary on Yirmiyahu, and he's also trying to reconcile I think Yirmiyahu with he's trying to reconcile Ben Zoma with Yirmiyahu, because Ben Zoma is saying that these are three good things that you can have, and Yirmiyahu is saying don't take credit for these things, and Rביnu is reconciling, saying, yeah, there are aspects you can take credit for and aspects you can't. And I'm just trying to understand what Rביnu Yonah is adding.
What specifically about the Sameach B'Chelko? It seemed like you were answering a question about.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Meaning meaning I was initially bothered by the fact that that emphasizing the aspects that are totally within your control. Learning from everyone's totally within your control. Conquering your inner desires is totally in your control. Being sameach in what you have, as long as it's enough to meet your needs, is not entirely within your control, because it's not, whether you meet your needs is not in your control. And so that was bothering me. But then I'm answering it by saying that, yeah, Rambam Yonah is talking about a bare minimum where you have enough for your needs, because only at that point can you praise yourself. If you don't have enough for your needs, you can't say, I'm happy with enough good to be able to engage in service of God. Yeah, Tamar?
Yeah, can I maybe add to that?
Sure.
I'm not sure, this may be a different point, but I think it's possible also, even with the Chachma and Gvura, even though it's less, I mean, every day there are people who don't have their needs, right? That they wouldn't be able to serve God because they don't have their needs. So maybe I feel like you might need a more extreme circumstance to be obstructed in the Chachma or the Gvura, but I think it's possible also. You could be like, if you actually get like shipwrecked somewhere, you cannot be learning from every person or something, you could have circumstances that obstruct you, and then it's like, too bad you can't have this perfection.
Right, that's true. Right. So in other words, it's not just the Ashir. It's just the Ashir is the one that is going to be, I guess, we're going to see, like most frequently that there are people who have or don't have their needs. Whereas same thing with Gvura. Like you might have a mental disorder where you can't control your inclinations, but like that's not going to be a common case. That's a good point. Yeah. Ayala?
Is there a difference when we're talking about, I mean, I think there is a difference, but I'm not clear on it. I guess being satisfied with your needs, your needs being satisfied, which I assume is like a physical, like just actually are they or not, and like a content type of satisfied. Like can your needs not be satisfied, but you still be content with them, with your Tefilah?
Yes, I think that would be like what I was suggesting in Rashi, where you don't have enough needs, but you're content with that. And I think that Rabbeinu Yonah is not talking about that. He's talking about where you have enough and you're happy with the fact that you have enough, and you're not, what did he say? You're not, hold on. Yeah, desiring to amass more money. And I actually, I like Rashi's thing of like not paining himself to chase and clamor to amass and acquire more than his portion. And you just got to replace Rabbeinu Yonah's notion of portion with Rashi's. Yeah.
So I guess I still have a question on Rashi.
Yeah. So do I. I have a lot of questions on Rashi. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So then should I save them?
Yeah. Let's make sure we understand Rabbeinu Yonah first. Yeah, Lauren.
Okay.
I'm confused about the toil and exertion line. So is he saying that when he says that those are achieved without toil and exertion, does that mean like you can control it? I'm just,
yeah. So I think
counterintuitive of what.
Yeah, I think what he means by toil and exertion is in other words, toil and exertion refers to obtaining these goods from the external world in the realm beyond your control, right? In other words, going out and let's say like strength, right? Like whether I can like lift something up is not just determined by an act of bechira. Having access to a particular book is not within the realm of my bechira. I can't just like bechira a book into existence. But when I'm confronted with a person, I can always learn from them no matter what, and I can always control my inner world no matter what. So that's me. That you don't need to engage in like external toil.
Okay. Also, I guess I'm curious, like what's the value with, I guess, like praising yourself? I guess maybe this is like a separate point, but why would it be good to praise yourself?
Right. I think that's why I'm understanding this to mean taking credit for. I mean, I think that praising yourself is is just gonna stoke your ego, And even in the pasuk itself, it just says, it doesn't say you should praise yourself for this. It says one who praises himself may praise himself, meaning that these are things you can take credit for, because they are actual acquisitions through your bechira that are entirely dependent on you. And I would go a little bit further. This is getting a little bit off of the immediate topic, but like, truthfully, you can't even fully take credit for these things, because the fact that you are in a position where you can exercise your bechira is due to factors beyond your control. Like right now, Rabbi Chait defined bechira as you're the cause of your own actions. So in that strict definition, when you do an act of bechira, you are the cause of your own actions. It's not like your actions are just the domino effect of like a bunch of causes outside of yourself. So you are, when you learn from every person, when you learn from someone and you choose to do that, that is an act of your bechira, so you can take credit for that. But in the grand scheme of things, the fact that you became the type of person who can exercise your bechira this way is also dependent on factors outside your control. So you can't even fully take credit for that. So to answer your question, I don't think he's advocating taking credit for stuff or praising yourself. I think he's saying like this, strictly speaking, a person could say this was me and I have this good because of me.
Right. So it's recognizing like what's under your control and what's not under your
exactly.
control, or what you could work on.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Now, Ayala, is your hand up for the question on Rashi or for a different question?
No, sorry, I forgot to.
Okay, that's fine. So, I think what I want to do is I have to stop soon. Ayala, why don't you ask your questions on Rashi, and I would consider maybe there's more on this that I would like to do. I wanted to define Rashi, and then I have not read the other meforshim yet, and there's also a sforno that's very similar to the Rabbeinu Yonah on all these qualities. And maybe next time what we could do is do both of those things, do Rashi and other meforshim on this, and then do the way sforno ties all of them together, tentatively. Neder. Yeah, Ayala, what were your questions on Rashi?
Okay, I think my question is like more of a classic question on Samech B'Cholto. But
Okay.
according to Rashi, if the person doesn't have his needs satisfied, I guess that means that he's either gonna like die physically soon or is not gonna be able to serve Hashem, and which will be like, I guess, spiritual death maybe. So why should he be satisfied with that? I understand. I mean, like the answer that we gave was because like that quality itself will help him get out of that state, I guess.
Right.
But so I guess, but I don't know. I guess I don't fully, or I'm not fully satisfied with that yet. Maybe I just have to think.
Sure. Okay, good. So I think that is a question on Rashi. Again, I'm not, okay. I'm persuaded that Rashi does disagree with Rabbeinu Yonah, because Rashi mentions nothing about your needs, except for this part about like not being dependent on other people. But I would be open to an idea that Rashi is not saying what I thought he was saying. So I have to re-examine that, and we can think about that between now and then. All right, let's summarize what we have for what we got for tonight. Okay, so what does Samech B'Cholto mean? And what is the connection between the pasuk and the idea? So according to the Meiri, then Samech B'Cholto means that you are focused on your needs over your wants, and you're not clamoring for excess, and you're viewing your needs as a means to serving Hashem, which is as opposed to some other value system. And the pasuk is really highlighting that, because it is showing that he is praiseworthy in this world and the next world, which means that he is enjoying what he has, and he's using it for the needs of his soul, for this, in this world and the next world. So the pasuk is defining Ashir, even though it doesn't use the word Ashir, and it's advocating a focus on measuring wealth based on whether your needs are met and whether you're using your wealth for the proper thing. Okay. In contrast, Rabbeinu Yonah is focusing, even though Rabbeinu Yonah is also focusing on using your wealth for avodas Hashem, he's focusing on the midah that is most conducive to being able to relate to your wealth that way. Just like with Chachma, he's saying, what is the ethical trait that sets you up the best to gain actual Chachma? So too, what is the midah that is the best midah to set you up for actually being able to make money that satisfies your needs to serve God? It's being content with what you have, and not clamoring after excesses. And then Rabbeinu Yonah ties it all together by saying that Ben Zoma is elaborating on Yirmiyahu, that these are true human attainments that you can take credit for, and because they're all going to be instrumental in the true human perfection of knowing God. I still am not 100% clear on why he is talking about this, like what the larger point is of bringing in Yirmiyahu, but that is definitely what he is saying. Okay, so I think that is better than what I anticipated. I was not sure we were going to get stuff, and we still have Rashi to go into, but I think this is good for tonight. And Bli Neder, next time we will look at Rashi and some other meforshim and maybe Sforno. And no shiur tomorrow. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
learning.
Thank you.
Okay,
Shabbat
bye.
shalom.
Have a good night.
Shalom.
Thank you so much.